video by Wayne Goss in which he was talking about the buffing technique. Now this technique is supposed to make your skin look like you have a filter on a picture, but you don't. And it's supposed to look really good in real life. I learned this from another makeup artist and I was like, who doesn't want that? So I saw other girls talking about it like it was the greatest thing ever. So I was like, why not try it out and see how this works. So first he says to moisturize your face pretty well because you're going to put a lot of powder over it and you don't want it to cake up in certain areas or whatever, especially if you have dry skin. So I moisturize my face. And then what I'm also gonna do is use a little bit of glycerin because this is like really oily stuff on my face, because I find that when I use matte foundations it won't always sit pretty well on my face because it's dry and then it'll collect on the dry patches, not pretty. And with glycerin I don't have that problem at all. But the thing is, you should really use a little bit, not a lot, like just a few drops should be enough. And then I'm just gonna work that into the skin. I wouldn't do this before a dewy foundation because it'll only get more oily. If you have oily skin, don't do this as well. And then the matte foundation itself should do the trick, but for the powder, for dry skin it's great. For winter time, amazing. It will act as a primer as well. Once I've done that, I'm gonna apply my foundation. For my foundation, I'm gonna mix up two colors like I usually do. The MAC Studio Fix Fluid in NC45 because this is a bit too orange for me. And then the MAC Face and Body in C6 because this is a little bit too light for me at the moment. So I'm just gonna mix the two up on my hand and then I'm just working that into the skin. Then I am going to highlight with MAC's Pro Longwear Concealer in NC42. And then I'm just working the concealer into my skin with a beauty blender. I'm also going to contour with my Black Up contouring stick in number 1. So before I move on, I have to set the foundation and the concealer because that's the first layer of powder. And that way, when you're gonna buff in the other powder, the foundation and concealer will stay in place and not move. I'm just gonna take a dry Real Techniques complexion sponge and just really press that powder in. He uses a powder puff. I'm just using the sponge that I have dry. Not too much powder on it. And I'm using a light color for the highlighted part because I don't want it all to be the same color. It's to me that defeats the purpose of putting that much concealer on your face. And I'm just really pressing that or tapping that into the skin. And the better you press it into the skin, the smoother it looks. Well, at least in his demonstration. And with the lighter powder, I'm just gonna set all the highlighted parts. I'm really working that in there. And then for the rest of my face, I'm gonna use a regular setting powder. This is Hello Flawless by Benefit. And this is a powder in my skin tone. So the next thing he did was adding contour or bronzer and blush, highlight, everything to the face, and a little bit stronger than usual. And for blush, I'm using Fenberry by Sleek. And then he used some highlight to give the skin a glow, like he said, but not that crazy, wild, heavy highlighter we're used to these days, but just a subtle one. Wayne Goss usually likes the subtle things in life. well, subtle makeup. Then the next step, and actually most important step that would create this filter on a picture or make you look really good in real life, is buffing a powder in. And I'm using a Select Sheer Press Powder by MAC in NC45, and he suggested a powder with color, so not a translucent one, because that will give you that extra coverage. He also suggested powder foundations that will give you that extra coverage. But since I don't have powder foundations, I'm using just this setting powder. And for that, I'm also using a buffing brush. It's supposed to make the transition of the blush and everything fade and just look really good. I'm gonna finish the rest of my makeup and then return with my thoughts on this whole thing. I'm looking at my face and I have to say I do love the result. It looks kind of powdery, but not too much. It might be because of the glycerin, and the powder sits pretty well on my face. And I think the whole pressing the powder into the skin worked pretty well. Then the buffing afterwards gave it a little bit more coverage. And it faded the blush really nicely. It doesn't look like a big stripe down my cheek, but it actually looks like a flush. Maybe a little bit stronger than you usually would, but it looks really nice. The highlight did fade because of the buffing. And I like my highlight a little bit stronger than this, but it does give you that natural glow like he said in his video. And my skin overall, I think, looks really good. It doesn't look that heavy at all. You do have to think the powder will bring in the fine line. So this is definitely a great technique for the night, but I wouldn't say for a day thing, because you're applying a lot of powder onto the skin. It would be even heavier if you would go for a powder foundation and buffing that over the skin. He didn't apply a setting spray though. I guess it would look a bit more natural with a setting spray, but I think you'll lose that whole filter effect then. I'm gonna make a picture in daylight and I'll be right back. So here's the picture. You can see it's really pretty. I also made an up close picture. The skin looks really good. It feels really smooth, and overall I like it.